The auditory oral approach is one path to developing listening and spoken language. The goal of the auditory oral approach is to use listening, as well as speech reading and natural gestures, to access spoken language. Although visual cues are used, strengthening listening abilities remains an essential part of this approach. Listening skills are worked on naturally in the child's environment throughout their day. That being said, this approach is highly dependent upon your child consistently using hearing assistive technology, such as hearing aids, bone-anchored hearing aids, or cochlear implants, so that they have the best possible auditory access to spoken language. Families must be committed to attending ongoing audiological appointments and make sure that their hearing assistive technology is working as expected with daily listening checks and technology inspections. In this approach, parents are encouraged to be face-to-face during interactions, and items in the environment may be used to support comprehension of spoken language. Children may be prompted to look as well as listen during activities to best enhance access to spoken language throughout their day. Some families using an auditory oral approach also use some sign support to provide more visual context for spoken language messages. Families typically choose this approach when their goal is for their child to use their home language and are committed to management and full-time use of hearing assistive technology. Families choosing this approach typically feel their children benefit from visual support such as gestures or speech reading for comprehension. They ultimately want their child to access their education through listening and spoken language, given some visual supports and advocacy training. Families can learn strategies to support this approach through oral teachers of the deaf, speech-language pathologists who have experience working with deaf and hard of hearing children, and/or listening and spoken language specialists. There are a variety of online resources and apps that can further strengthen understanding and use of strategies and techniques used with an auditory oral approach. Many families find resources and invaluable support through connections with other families and deaf and hard of hearing adults.
Avery's our only child, and she was born deaf, hard of hearing. We found out on day 3 in the hospital that she failed her newborn hearing screening. And we originally had a ton of tests after that, and they told us it was hereditary. However, we have no family members that have been diagnosed deaf, hard of hearing. And by the time she was 3 months old, she was aided. And I really do feel that was an important step in her journey, because she was aided at exactly the 3-month mark where you start to develop communication and speech. And at 3 months old, that's when you really start to focus on learning language. And she had her hearing aids on so young that it really helped her progress. By the time she was 18 months old, she lost more hearing. And that's when we found out that she had a progressive loss, meaning that eventually, possibly down the road, she could go deaf. So she lost hearing at 18 months old, and then she lost more hearing again at 4 years old. So at 4 years old, we had decided, okay, we've been verbal communicators from day one. It's what we chose in the beginning because she only had a mild hearing loss, and we didn't realize it was a progressive loss. So at 4 years old, we decided, since it is a progressive loss, we need to add another modality to our language. And we chose cued speech because after meeting people, other parents, and talking with her teacher for the deaf, what my main concern was learning to read, spelling. It's really hard to learn to read when you don't hear all the sounds. Cued speech is a different way to sign out the sounds of words. So we started with that. Avery is now 7 years old, in 2nd grade, and is one of the top readers in her class, which is pretty amazing considering if anyone sat in on her audiologist tests and really saw what she can't hear, it's really amazing how much she has grown through the years. She's an amazing lip reader because of cued speech, and it has really benefited her, and that's what we decided to do. We don't use cued speech like when we're talking throughout the day. We've decided we use it when she needs it. So I'll use it when we're reading books at night and she's trying to sound out words, or when we're doing spelling words and there's sometimes some of the words on your lips make the same movement, like vote and boat. It's very similar. It's very much the same. And if you don't have the vocabulary behind it, it can be hard to learn to spell a word that sounds exactly the same. So I'll cue out some of those sounds and then she picks it up and she's done phenomenal. That's why we chose cued speech. But the majority of it, she's a verbal communicator. We are all verbal communicators. That's what she uses at school, and so that's what we've done. So we did a weekend getaway at the Pine Tree Camp, where they did a cued speech presentation, and they also went over other modalities, speech modalities, while we were there. And I got together with Nicole Dobson, who we started talking, and I'm like, I really want to introduce this into her life. I'm very nervous about when she learns to read, and I want to give her a tool to succeed. And it has been a tool for us to succeed. So I got together with Nicole, and we now do cued speech with Nicole every other week for an hour and a half. That's what works for our family. So every other week we get together with Nicole and we do an hour and a half of cued speech, and we go over we do kind of like a pre-teaching for Avery. So the teacher will give her teacher for the deaf and her cued speech stuff that they're going to go over a week in advance. So Avery gets to view it ahead of the other students ahead of time. So it gives her that background in advance, so that way when she's lip reading, she has an idea of what they're going to speak about, and it has helped. She's an A+ student. She's done very well. Avery misses out on 50% of everything that's being said, and your brain will automatically fill stuff in if you have a background and some kind of a knowledge ahead of time. So for her, it's helped because it's filling in those gaps for her. I learned cued speech. I'm not that great at it, nope. but I use it for her when we're reading at night. So there'll be words that she's struggling to sound out, and I'll help her with the cueing. I went to St. Dom's, and I wanted my child to go to St. Dom's. And that was a really hard decision to go private versus public, because if you go public, you get so many more services than if you go private. And we just decided she was excelling. She was doing so good. And I said, why are we not going for this? Let's just do it and see what happens. And if it doesn't work, well, we change schools. St. Dom's has been amazing. They work with me. They'll do whatever I want. So it's worked for us. And the smaller classroom sizes have really benefited her. And I'm so glad I trusted my gut and went with St. Dom's. So at 4 years old, when she lost more hearing, we know it's going to come eventually someday. So at that point, we decided to go to Boston Children's Hospital and go meet with their deaf and hard of hearing unit. And we met with Dr. Kane. She's amazing. And we did all the tests. We spent an entire day there going over all the tests. And they determined that Avery wouldn't be a great candidate. She'd be the best candidate for a cochlear implant. So her speech is so strong already that if she did go deaf and we had to get a cochlear implant, that it would work fine for her.
My husband Mike and I have 2 girls. Sophie's 4 years old and Grace is 1.5. Sophie was born with bilateral severe hearing loss. So Sophie first got her cochlear implants when she was 12 months old, activated at 13 months. And it was a pretty exciting day. We first got to see her react to some noises, and so it was an emotional moment for us. But it was definitely a slow curve from there. Little things would happen. We'd see her start to react to her own name, and that was very exciting. Her first word was hi, and then she'd say it all the time, hi, hi, hi. And then from there, she kind of took off. So just kept learning more words. That's when we got her into speech therapy. So she's had speech therapy since she was 2. She's still getting it now at preschool. She's pretty much at the same level as her peers, an average level. So we're happy with the progress she's made. So when we got Sophie's diagnosis that she had severe hearing loss, we were pretty blindsided. We really knew nothing about hearing loss. We'd never really been exposed to people with hearing loss in our everyday lives, and we didn't really know what our options were. So it's always been a goal for us, for Sophie to be able to communicate in spoken language. But we didn't know what that would look like, if that was something that would be attainable with her level of hearing loss. So we had to do a lot of research. We had a lot of support. And ultimately, we decided to get her hearing technology. She's had hearing technology since she was 3 months old. She started with hearing aids and then cochlear implants. And that's really just what was best for our family. And it's what worked for us. She's thrived. She loves to talk, she loves to sing, she loves to dance. And she, from a young age, she's been in preschool. She's had support in the preschool from speech pathologists, from teacher of the deaf. She's now at the Mackworth Island preschool. So she's really thrived. I honestly couldn't imagine it any other way. We sometimes forget that she has hearing loss. Yeah, I mean, we did some sign when she was younger. They call them baby signs. And we did that until she had her implants and she was activated. And then we really focused on spoken language and speech therapy. But I think it's important to remember that you're not locked into a communication method, and it's pretty fluid. As she's gotten older and she's been at the preschool, she's been exposed to more kids with different hearing loss and different ways of communicating. She's picked up a lot of ASL. She's pretty into it. She comes home and she signs her name. She's very excited. So, I mean, I would love for her to continue to grow and learn more ASL. But our main focus is spoken language and getting that as good as we can before she goes to kindergarten. We were very supportive from day one, the day we got the diagnosis. We've had support from teacher of the deaf, other parents. We were connected to other families who had hearing technology and have kind of been there, done that. We were able to learn from them. So that was a good resource for us. We were connected with a speech pathologist at a pretty young age who really helped us with strategies to be able to get her to use as much language as possible. As well as her audiologist, who made sure she had the right resources in the classroom, the right technology. So I've had a lot of support.